And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of 2020 Range Days. I'm your host, Dan Edwards, aka Canadan Golf, on Twitter, and Canadan on the THP forums. With me, as always, is my good friend James, J-Man, staff writer extraordinaire, ever popular knowledge guy from a club perspective. Welcome back, my friend.
Well, hello. You're so kind to me. I feel like I'm being set up.
Now, we did have some great feedback on the THP forums talking about how James brings the heat every week with club tech knowledge. And it's not going to be any different this week because we are talking about Tour Edge Exotics EXS 220. James, there is a lot going on looking at this iron. Can you give me your basic thoughts before we even get into tech as to what we're seeing here?
It's Tour Edge doing what they've been doing the last couple of releases. I mean, the EXS lineup for them in the last release before the 220s was massive. I don't like to throw away the whole game changer thing, but for them it really was. Drivers, fairways, hybrids, even the irons had a lot of success, and they've really worked to build off of that design in this one. And that's one thing Tour Edge is never afraid of, is to go way outside of the box.
Yeah, it's a great look. A lot of compelling elements. Obviously, we see a big giant tungsten there, which means there's definitely some additional elements inside what we can't really see. So I think best thing to do right now is do what everyone else gets a chance to do. It's go to the website. Let's take a look at what is actually in these irons. And the first thing we're going to scroll down to, James, is that there's hollow body technology incorporated into this product.
Yeah, so they're a hollow body set in the way of the long irons. 4 through 7 iron are actually hollow body designs. The 8 through gap wedge instead use the deep undercut. So in the hollow bodies, you're talking about 450 miraging steel with a cup face. I know some companies call it face cup instead of cup face, and a big reason for that is Tour Edge was doing cup face before everybody else. They've kind of always been on the cutting edge of that and implementing it into different things, and they don't necessarily get the credit they deserve. Then as you go down in the scoring irons, you're talking about 431 stainless, and they're a solid design.
Yeah, you can definitely tell there's a lot going on under the hood. But as we scroll down, I noticed this thing called Spiderweb VF Tech. And I'll be honest with you, James, this is a kind of a concept that's familiar from a face profile, I guess you could say, but more on the insides. What is going on here?
Well, I mean, this is Tour Edge's way to describe their variable face thickness, right? We've heard inverted cone, we've heard all these other things that go with it. For Tour Edge, that they're with the 220s, they're running with Spiderweb VFT tech, and the illustration you guys see on there kind of does a good job of trying to illustrate. Basically, they want the face to act as a web in terms of the strength stays away from the face as well. So basically you get more speed in every direction. I mean, that's always been the purpose of variable face technology in any club.
So we're scrolling down here again because I'm not going to argue with what you're saying. It sounds great to me. But on to the element that I always love to talk about is tungsten. We see this thrown in the toe of a lot of product, and there's a reason for it. It promotes and improves sweet spot area, obviously, and gives players a chance to maybe hit it a little bit wider than on that little tiny dime section in the middle of the face, and still have some success with it.
I mean, you pretty much just covered everything right there whenever it comes to tungsten. So I don't really have anything else to say other than I love tungsten. I love that we are seeing pretty much everybody go to the use of tungsten. Now the applications are different because tungsten in its pure state is really hard to work with and hard to apply in an iron, but especially in longer irons, a significant amount of tungsten's always really been good for players with the misses that we tend to have out there.
I love it. We've also got some launch pad tech, some ramp sole. James, what other element do you really want to talk about here from the EXS 220?
Yeah, I mean, the ramp sole and the launch pad tech thing is kind of I don't want to say a kitschy terminology that goes with it, but really it is. What they've done is they've taken the irons and they've actually put heel relief and toe relief in the iron, something we usually see predominantly in wedges, right? Their idea is with the players they're going to be playing the 220s, they could use that little bit of relief in the areas in order to allow the club to go through the turf better. So instead of using a V-sole or something like that, they're building in some relief. They've also put a notch into the irons. So for those afraid of the inability with some of these irons to be able to bend them a significant amount, they can be bent both ways. So
yeah, we're going to move down. Obviously, a progressive set is something we're seeing more and more of in 2020. And it really lends itself to a number of benefits. Now, obviously, there are companies out there doing the more traditional method where they have a number of a number of different products in their lineup, but we also have a lot of companies saying, you know what, let's create a progressive set to begin with, so you don't need to blend. Do you have a preference there, James, or do you like to see companies do this?
this to me, this is the tried and true way. Because instead of trying to force, and don't get me wrong, a lot of companies now with split sets, I'm playing one now, they have managed to blend it with two different sets that stand alone and bring them together. But this is kind of the original way that we saw progressiveness in irons. If you look from 4-iron to 5-iron, you don't notice that much of a difference, which is what you want. Same thing as you go from 9-iron to pitching wedge. You want a visual blend as you're pulling clubs from the bag from a specific distance. Now, if you take the 4-iron and the pitching wedge, in the case of these, you've got a pretty big difference that's going on with it. But the key is they do it slowly. The offset tapers slowly. The top line in a lot of cases tapers slowly. The height of the blade, the depth of the face, if you want to call it that, tapers slowly. So it blends and flows much easier. To me, when you're talking about the game improvement sector, which I think these are safe to say you would fit those into there, this type of progressive setup works better than kind of meshing the two different sets.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about range days before we jump into the actual hitting bay over at Club Champion. And I want to give a shout out to our a great partnership that we had with Club Champion this year, James. We went up to their headquarters in Chicago, enjoyed a full couple of days worth of hitting product and neutralizing the variable. So range days this year is all about taking 5 shots, in this case 6 because we were trying to hit some bad ones, taking 5 straight shots with a product. It's not necessarily about how well they fit me as a golfer. It's not about a basic review of the club. This is just about talking technology. This is about taking that product in the hitting bay and saying more than just what is in there, seeing if what is supposedly in the club is performing as it should be, which is a lot of fun to do, quite frankly. In this case, we were able to do that with loads of irons, thanks to Club Champions. There's structured centers that allow us to transition between heads while using the same shaft. So we're also eliminating the variable there. Same shaft, 5 shots, good or bad. And James, I say we head to the bay over at Club Champion and take a look at those 5 swings, 6 swings. Really interesting look on this one, James.
It is. It fits within the line. It mimics the soles of their fairway woods, so it kind of ties it all together a little bit. Slipstream. Yeah. Whoa. Holy little spin, Batman.
Okay.
Okay, that was better.
Okay.
First one was a little toe side and it killed the spin on it. Second one was right where you want it. They sound pretty powerful. .200 carry, 134 ball speed. Right back in that 5,000 range.
There, we missed one. That'll help. Low?
That one was low center.
That's good. We'll see a lot of this head, James.
That should catch a little higher on the face. That was way out on the toe. That's 5.
Can that really be that far out? And we're back looking downrange at Tour Edge Exotics EXS 220.
Attaboy.
Nailed it. James, as we've seen in the past, and who knows, it might have just been February. It might have been the way I was set up in the sim. I've noticed a trend and a little bit of a fade. So maybe that's what I took to the simulator that day. But I do see that it's pretty consistent. There's a couple really good ones there and a couple ones that were predictably a little bit flowy to the right.
I think in iron sets like this, that's what people always want to see, and honestly what you should look for when you're dealing with a bigger iron. And they're not gigantic. Don't get me wrong with that, but when you're dealing with a bigger profile that has so much going on inside of it, everybody is curious about consistency. So for us to be able to see the downrange view, for those of you that can't see it, as Dan said, there's kind of a little bit of a fade pattern, but it's nothing out of the ordinary, and that's the big thing. You don't have that one little stinker that's sitting way out there that just kind of makes you curious about stuff. There's consistency.
What I really liked before we even start talking about swing data is that club presented a resounding crunch in a very positive way when I made good contact. It was very rewarding for me. And we'll get into a shot later where I thought I hit it exceptionally well and it didn't quite read that way, but the results definitely did. James, I think Tour Edge has done a wonderful job in this case of creating a product with this much technology built into it and still promoting positive feedback in terms of sound, what would necessarily technically be considered feel. So,
well, yeah, we're dealing with a $779 set of irons. So and I won't say the problem, but the thing that Tour Edge battles the most is not the quality of the gear, because once people hit it, they realize it. I think both you and I, looking at the irons, kind of had that initial thought of, oh, okay, here it goes. And then through first impact, we get the reaction of, that's not at all what I expected. That's really good. That's solid. It's the sound that you want to hear off of it. And Tour Edge has never cut corners on any of that. They always compete with anybody else. Sometimes the price, as we've seen the exotics line change from super, super high end, right, to now being more accessible, people get curious about it. And these were a pleasant surprise. I think that's more than fair to say.
Yeah, and definitely when you mentioned that companies are becoming more aware of it, and Tour Edge has never really not been, but they've done a nice job throughout. I think this is the year of the product that really genuinely sounds good. We hadn't had many duds, and it was great to see that Tour Edge continued the trend that they've had in the past of making good products sound good. So James, this is my favorite part where we get to talk about the worst strikes on the head. Now, it does look like there's another one that's a little bit worse. We'll talk about that later. I promise you. This is the one that was probably furthest away from the center of the head. It was 13 millimeters low, which based on the diagram is quite low on the face by comparison to the others. Mm-hmm. I do see 1.34 efficiency with nearly 130 mile an hour ball speed. Definitely not my fastest swing, but it was right in the heart of it all. And I feel like this is a wonderful opportunity to talk about forgiveness as a whole, because I'm way down there. Spin's not crazy. The numbers are still pretty good. And I think I got more out of the shot than I deserved.
Well, I mean, so we have the one thing we haven't got into with it that you mentioned, we use 6 irons as everything goes into it. So the 6 iron in the XS 220s is 24 degrees. So some are going to scream loft jacking and all these other things with it, but you're going to see the rest of the data when we get to the end of it. And I'll let you all look at the peak heights and decide if you think that it's just turning the loft down for the sake of it. For what we saw, the 6 iron's a hollow body design in the set, which works best for us, I think, because you're getting all of the tech, right? In the scoring irons, we're getting the more solid design. So here, catching one low, you're really seeing the variable face thickness and the tungsten and everything going into it work. Low on the face, you expect a spin jump. I mean, compared to what you're going to see in the other irons, we didn't really see that much of a spin jump here.
No, it was maybe only a couple hundred RPMs of spin. Obviously, total spin is at 5,700, which is not a bad number for a 6 iron. From my perspective, and as you mentioned, we'll discuss later as we get down the line data, that is a great number for me from a 6 iron that promotes quite a bit of loft. And not to mention, we're at almost 3 degrees down from an angle of attack, which, if anyone is familiar with that, promotes quite a bit of spin as you get to that 2, 3, 4 degrees down in your angle of attack. And yet in this case, this is a very manageable shot. And James, I think a lot of golfers can relate to this because we do have a good percentage of our golfing nation that are steep. They are aggressive into the ball. They might hit it low. They might hit it thin, is what you probably say on the head. This should resonate with them because this is their world, right?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of us out there want to hit the golf ball, like you said, not swing through the ball, right? We want to hit the golf ball.
Yeah.
That promotes a steep angle of attack. It just does. That's why the vast majority of golfers are steep. So yeah,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so seeing spin numbers, and you're a golfer who produces a lot of spin. I mean, it's your big, I'm going to use a weird term, your bugaboo whenever it comes to irons, right? You like that? I'm trying to bring a new one each episode.
Killing me.
No, but you produce a lot of spin. So for us to see your swing and to catch it low and to still be in a really manageable spin number, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think what the nice thing about this is we actually saw different experiences as we went through each of the shots. And what's exciting, James, is we actually found two that are kind of comparable to each other. So let's start with this one, because as you can see, there's one relatively close to it. For those who can't see it, there's a contact point that might be a fraction, maybe a millimeter in a different location, but they're almost back to back. Mm-hmm. So we have a great chance here to say, all right, as we move around the face, yeah, you see those slight changes of improvement. But in this case, you're basically hitting almost identical in the face. And we get to make slight comparisons to the two. So James, what do you see here?
1.34 efficiency is what's going to stand out the most, which if you were going to pick a spot on the iron head, for those of you that are not watching or that are listening to us instead, if you were going to pick a spot that you would call the middle, the sweet spot of the face, this is it. I mean, so, but it's going to get a little more interesting here in a second as we move on to it. Dynamic loft is really good. Your angle of attack is where we've talked about it being. Spin stays in the 5,000 range, which is amply playable for as high as we're hitting the ball with this. And not to mention the ball speed creeps up to 133.
Yeah, you kind of nailed it. And I can't help but look at the club head speed because we hit a lot of product that day. And this is, whether intentional or not, listed at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard, which means we've hit a lot of shots to this point, and I'm still promoting nearly 100 mile an hour club speed off a 6-iron. I mean, these heads can really move. Rather than make an argument against what you said or agree with you, I'm going to move straight into the next shot, the second comparison shot. And as you folks can see, as I bounce back and forth between the two, they are almost on top of each other, about as close as you can get. One is 2 millimeters toe, 8 millimeters low. The next one is 1 millimeter toe, 7 millimeters low. We did see a very marginal increase in ball speed, James, despite a reduction in club head speed, very marginal. But we also saw an efficiency improvement. It's not a big one, 1.34 to 1.36. Would you say, based on everything we're looking at here, that this is a fair and reasonable amount of variable with two shots that are nearly identical?
Well, so for me, the first thing that people are going to look at or are going to listen to when we're talking about this with the second shot is that it's ideal. And you see these increases and everything else that goes with it. Our efficiency has gone up by 0.02, which in golf terms is actually significant. Speed's gone up. And club head speed has not. I mean, we've actually regressed a little bit from the previous shot. But to me, the first shot, which is a little bit lower and a little bit more to the toe side, is the one that tells the bigger story because you maintain so much compared to the ideal shot. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're talking 1.34 to 1.36 efficiency whenever you are missing in a spot of the toe where we should see a pretty noticeable change. Not a ton because we're still in the middle of the club, obviously, but you should be able to see some dynamic differences.
I think it very close. And one thing we haven't really touched on yet, James, is as we've seen with my profile through range days, you can definitely tell that I would benefit from a degree or two upright on most of these iron heads. It's been my thing for a long time. Tall guy, play stock. These things happen, right? And the beauty of a place like Club Champion is they're more than willing to work with you if you folks are looking for a good quality fitter. They will modify those things on the fly, so you make sure you're getting good product that performs well for you. So let's move on to my next shot, James. This is, what do we call this? The Anomaly?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, pretty much. The first thing that's going to stand out, and I'll explain it for you guys that are listening, this one's a little bit higher toe, right? So according to our data, it's kind of in the midline of the club as far as the vertical axis is concerned. We're 11 millimeters towards the toe, though, and technically 1 millimeter low, but I mean, okay, it's the center of the face towards the toe. But the spin now is the one that's kind of created a conversation point with Dan and I on this shot. The spin has dipped to 39.39. What are your thoughts on that, Dan?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And the first thing I want to, there's two things I really want to address here, James.
Efficiency.
First of all, my face is close to my target, which is obviously going to improve the way the ball reacts from it. Instead of creating some of that side spin, I've definitely come around beautifully on this one. Toe down isn't so bad. But the one thing I really wanted to isolate here was the fact that my down angle of attack is less than, like, nearly half, more than a degree less down. And we've promoted significantly less backspin. To me, I look at this, James, and I say, you know what? This tells me that we have the ability to work the ball a little bit more than I was anticipating with a club head like this, which is wonderful.
Yeah. And I mean, so there's a lot of things that we could break down with this as to the whys. And I mean, we can sit here all day. And yes, toe side, we should see something of a change in the spin dynamic. I mean, we could look at your dynamic loft with where it hit and everything into it. But the reality is there's also 19 grams of tungsten behind where you hit it. So
True.
it should create a ton of stability in it. So if you're hitting a spot on the club where you usually see more movement in the head because of a lack of stability, and now we have this added mass behind it, that could also play a role.
I like that thought.
It's design, man.
Point. Yeah, there you go. I don't think we need to get too much more in depth on that one, but there is. I think everyone who's actually watching the video right now has to know what is going on way out on the toe. So we're going there because why not? Here's the weird part. We all saw in the video where I kind of reacted to a one. So this is my second to last shot. And if you notice in the video, I look down at what the readout was, and then I look at the club head, and I said, there's no way that just happened, because I flushed it.
Well, and this is what, so I was manning all the data and everything going through to it. So I was giving Dan feedback as he's swinging. And that's what I said. That was way on the toe. And that's where we get the pause in the video of the wait, what? And honestly, until we got back and we've digested the data, I didn't think anything of it, because for me in the moment, it's okay, that's a toe side one. Let's move on to the next, because we're trying to work through all this and we're trying to get so much done. But as we went back through it, I have no problem saying there is a 0% chance that this one was hit where it says on the club face.
So I remember hitting this shot, and you can tell based on the reaction that I have that I'm very satisfied with it until I look down at the technology that's in front of us. We're looking at 138 mile an hour of ball speed, which might be some of the fastest we saw during our time in Chicago. Efficiency is way up there at 1.40, which is outstanding, especially for a 6-iron. I mean, this is hammered in every facet of the way, with the exception of, if this were on a simulator and we were playing sim golf, I'd be pretty disappointed at the readout.
Well, yeah. But I mean, the other part of it though, look, 5,000 RPMs again. 5,000 RPMs, even with the 2.2 downward attack angle, that's super playable for as much speed as you're creating to get that level of spin. That's what I don't know. You make me very angry. Well,
let's go down the line, James, before you really get too angry. As you can see, folks, we have some outstanding ball speed at almost 134 mile an hour on average. Again, I believe this is one of the highest performing ball speed products available that we've seen so far. It is unbelievable. But James, while we are at an average of 38 yards in peak height, this is one of the more penetrating experiences I had.
Yeah, I mean, that for you, that's a wheelhouse. And yeah, we have one in there that's at 33 that brings the average down, but by the same token, we've got one at 40. So to meet in that median of 38 yards of peak height for you is it's really good.
That's very satisfying.
And you're maintaining 47 degrees descent angle. So again, 5,000 RPMs, 38 yard peak, 47 degrees. That's going to sit down on every single green. Every single green.
What I like, James, this is what's interesting to me, especially from a product like this and from a 6-iron itself. The one thing I've seen is that there is a pretty significant variable between a great strike and a not great strike. But out of the 6 shots we have listed, again, we hit an extra one to try and hit a bad one, and it did not work out. But we are looking at... let's see, 213 yards of carry as my biggest and 188 yards as my weakest. And that weak one is a pretty bad one. But if we eliminate one, then we're quite a bit tighter. In fact, close to as competitive as we've seen, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's on par with everything that we've hit. And that's part of the point of range days, though. We're not trying to get you to fit the best iron for you. We're trying to get enough swings in that you don't necessarily adjust to the iron.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we really need to put more emphasis on that. We don't want you to acclimate. You and I both know, as long as you reviewed golf clubs and as long as I've been reviewing clubs for the website, you acclimate to what you're sent. Like you're going to change subliminally, whether you realize it or not, subconsciously, not subliminally. You're going to change and you're going to adapt to it. So by us doing 5 or 6 in this case shots, it's a better image of what's going on with the head itself.
It doesn't take that long, that's for sure. But I love that kind of the takeaway here is that this is a product that will perform for those who are more aggressive in the turf. Specifically, these will help you to reduce some of that spin, promote better distance overall, I'd say, James. And not just that, but solid variables around the head. So if you're a guy who hits it a little bit low, a little bit toe, a little bit mid, a little bit high, these might be a great set of irons to go and take a look at.
Well, and this is where I want to emphasize again, like for bang for your buck with Tour Edge. Tour Edge is doing it maybe better than anybody. And I say that having worked this year for our website with the driver, with the fairway wood, with the hybrid. So I've seen the metal wood side of it. So for us to be able to go do this and to get to see the irons up close, you really do have a pretty complete lineup. And the one thing that's been consistent on our community is everybody who's gone out and hit the 220 lineup has come away impressed. Not just because of the price, but because the performance actually has stood up. For a game improvement style iron, it may not be a look that everybody likes because that's personal preference, right? But for a game improvement style iron, the 220s here, they hung with everything that we hit this week, the week we were in Club Champion, the couple of days we were there.
Well, I can't wrap that up any better, James. All I want to do is say to those who are viewing and enjoying, I hope you have an opportunity to subscribe to THP TV. And we have a lot of content that's similar to this, maybe a little bit different, but we will constantly be uploading new video, more on the range days, and we definitely have others as well. So please take the time to like the video if you enjoyed it. Give us a comment in the comment section as to whether you've hit EXS 220, whether this video makes you more curious to hit it, especially from that exceptional price point. And again, stay tuned for more video. We will have lots more coming soon. James, thank you, and thanks for everyone watching.